Have you ever heard a story so chilling it makes you question what's real? Tonight, we're going deep into the mountains of Takayama, to a place shrouded in a silence so profound, even the locals refuse to speak its name. The Whispering Shrine. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a cautionary tale about curiosity and the shadows it can awaken. Our story follows for college friends, Johnny, Mika, Ray, and Tomo, who thought legends were just for fun. They were about to learn that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey into a darkness that whispers back. Deep in the heart of old Takayama, where ancient traditions cling to the mountain mist, a group of 4 friends decided to challenge a local taboo. Johnny, the confident leader; Mika, his cautious girlfriend; Ray, the adventurous spirit; and Tomo, the quiet observer. Their target was the infamous Whispering Shrine, a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place where it was said something ancient and malevolent was sealed away centuries ago. The legend was simple and terrifying. If you visit after the stroke of midnight, the shrine doesn't just echo your presence, it answers you directly. The villagers warned that the whispers from the shrine weren't just the wind, they were the voices of whatever was trapped inside, luring you in, promising secrets, but only delivering despair. They spoke of people who went up the mountain path and never returned, their stories becoming just another layer of fear surrounding the place. But for 4 thrill-seeking students on a holiday break, this sounded less like a warning and more like the perfect late-night adventure. They packed their flashlights, left off the dire predictions, and set a course for the forbidden clearing, unaware that the mountain was already listening. As their car climbed the winding, narrow roads, a thick, unnatural fog descended, swallowing the world around them. The headlights barely cut through the oppressive gray, turning the familiar forest into a maze of ghostly shapes. The usual night sounds of crickets and rustling leaves were gone. An unnerving silence had fallen, so complete it felt like the entire mountain was holding its breath, waiting. When they finally parked and stepped out into the clearing, the air was cold and heavy. Before them stood the shrine, a crooked, decrepit structure, half devoured by moss and creeping vines. It looked like it was slowly being dragged back into the earth. A single, Ruskavet bell hung at the entrance, motionless against the still air. Yet, as they approached, a faint, sibilant sound reached their ears, like voices whispering just at the edge of hearing. It was impossible to make out the words, but the feeling was unmistakable. They were not alone. Johnny, ever the skeptic, stepped forward with a nervous laugh. "See? It's your stories," he declared, his voice sounding small in the vast silence. Probably just the wind. He reached out, not to ring the bell, but just to touch its cold, metallic surface. The moment his fingers made contact, a soft, mournful chime echoed through the clearing. He hadn't pulled the rope. He hadn't even pushed it. The bell had rung on its own. A collective gasp went through the group. The faint whispers around them seemed to intensify, swirling in the fog. But it was Mika who noticed it first. Her eyes widened in horror, her hand flying to her mouth. "Johnny," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Your shadow." Everyone's flashlights snapped towards him, bathed in the intersecting beams. Johnny's shadow was contorting on the ground behind him. It wasn't mirroring his movements. It was twitching and elongating, stretching and shrinking unnaturally, like a separate entity fighting to break free from his feet. It writhed as if something inside him, something dark, was clawing its way out. The air grew colder, and the whispers became clearer. Moda personal. One by one, they heard their own names being called from the darkness enveloping the shrine. "Mika." A voice hissed from the trees to her left. "Tomo." A breathy whisper echoed from behind. Ray let out a sharp, terrified scream as something icy and intangible brushed against the back of her neck. She spun around, flashlight beam cutting wildly through the mist. Nothing. There was no one there, but when Tomo shone his light on the damp earth around them, his heart stopped. Fresh, muddy footprints were appearing in the soil, slowly and deliberately forming a tight circle around them. But there were no people, no bodies, nothing to make the prints. They were being stalked, hunted by something they couldn't see. Panic erupted. The fun adventure had twisted into a waking nightmare. Johnny, his bravado shattered, was the first to break. "The car. Let's go," he yelled, turning to sprint back the way they came. But the path was gone. Where there had been a clear, trodden trail just moments before, now stood a dense, impenetrable wall of ancient trees. They were trapped. Frantically, they tried other directions, pushing through thorny bushes and stumbling over gnarled roots. But every attempt led them right back to the clearing, back to the foot of the malevolent shrine. It was as if the mountain itself had reconfigured its geography, folding in on them, swallowing them whole. The shrine was no longer just a destination. It was the center of their prison. Then, the bell began to ring, not the soft chime from before, but a violent, frantic clanging that resonated through their bones. The ground beneath their feet started to tremble, and a low groan emanated from the shrine itself. With a horrifying screech of rotting wood, the heavy doors of the shrine, which had been sealed shut for centuries, began to creak open. They revealed not an altar or a room, but a void of absolute, pitch-black darkness. A darkness so complete it seemed to absorb the light from their flashlights. And from that suffocating void, a new voice emerged, cold, ancient, and filled with a chilling authority. It wasn't whispering anymore. It spoke one clear sentence that sealed their fate. One must stay. Terror paralyzed them. Mika sobbed, clutching Johnny's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. Tomo was frozen in place, his eyes locked on the horrifying blackness in the shrine's doorway. What did it mean, one must stay? Were they supposed to choose? To sacrifice one of their own to this thing? Before anyone could think, before anyone could even move, an unseen force lashed out from the darkness. It was impossibly fast. Ray, who had been standing closest to the shrine, let out a choked cry as she was violently yanked off her feet. It was as if an invisible hand had wrapped around her, dragging her relentlessly toward the open doors. She clawed at the dirt, her friends screaming her name, reaching for her, but they grabbed only empty air. In a horrifying instant, she was pulled across the threshold and into the void. The moment she disappeared, the ancient wooden door slammed shut with a deafening boom that echoed across the mountain. The violent ringing of the bell stopped, the ground ceased its trembling, and the whispers fell silent. The oppressive presence was gone. The forest around them seemed to exhale, and as they looked back, the path to their car was there again, clear and waiting. The next morning, the rising sun cast long shadows across the abandoned car at the base of the mountain trail. Villagers, drawn by the unsettling silence, found it empty. They followed the tracks up the muddy path. They found 3 sets of footprints, frantic, stumbling, desperate, leading back down the mountain. But a 4th set of prints, belonging to Ray, led up the path and stopped abruptly at the entrance to the Whispering Shrine. From there, they simply vanished. The other 3 friends were found miles away, huddled together, incoherent with shock and grief. They never spoke of what happened in that clearing, but the horror was etched into their eyes forever. The town of Takayama tried to forget, adding another layer of warning and fear to the legend. But some say the shrine isn't truly silent. On quiet, moonless nights, when the fog rolls down from the peaks, the old bell can still be heard, ringing a single, mournful chime. And if you dare to get close enough, if you listen with all your heart, you can hear a new voice has joined the whispers. A lonely, desperate voice that endlessly repeats a single name into the darkness. Ray, thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoy tales of folklore and things that go bump in the night, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the dark. Stay safe out there, and remember, some legends are best left undisturbed. Until next time.